Do you want to deepen your practice as a world language teacher and sharpen your skills around proficiency? Well, in today's episode, we're exploring a way to do just that through the lens of National Board Certification. I'm joined by Erin E.H, a French teacher in Colorado, and Lisa Bartels, a French teacher in North Carolina. They are both National Board Certified teachers. Together, we'll break down why the process is especially beneficial for language teachers and what it actually looks like to go through the process step by step. So, let's jump in. Whether you're planning your first lesson or celebrating your 20th year in the language classroom, I understand exactly where you are. I'm Joshua Cabral, and I'm also a language teacher in my 29th year of teaching. Now, I also have the opportunity to support schools and teachers all across the country who are working towards increasing proficiency and building confidence in their students. This is the World Language Classroom Podcast, with over 200 episodes of practical strategies tested in real classrooms just like yours and mine. So let's jump in. Vamos, allons-y. Hello, my friends. Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, mis amigos. Welcome to the World Language Classroom Podcast. I am Joshua Cabral, and thank you, as always, for taking the time out of your week to listen to the podcast, to hang out with me and talk about language teaching. I know that you are an incredible language teacher because you do things like listen to a podcast about language teaching. You probably read blogs, you're in social media groups, but you are doing an excellent job as a language teacher, and I appreciate so much that you are allowing me to be a part of your teaching journey. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. Today, we're diving into a topic that comes up actually quite a bit in conversations with world language teachers, especially those who are thinking long-term about their careers and leadership and impact, and that's National Board Certification. Now, for language teachers, National Board Certification can feel a little mysterious. You may have heard that it's really rigorous, or you know someone who's gone through the process, or maybe you've wondered whether it's really designed with world language teachers in mind. Is it worth the time, the effort, the vulnerability that comes with reflecting so deeply on your own teaching and your practice in your classroom? So today it is all about pulling back the curtain on the process specifically for world language teachers. We're going to talk about why National Board Certification is relevant for world language teachers and how it aligns with what we already value, things like proficiency and communication, culture, reflection, and what the process actually looks like from the inside. And I'm so happy today to be joined by two incredible educators who bring both experience and perspective to this conversation. So Erin E.H is a French teacher in Colorado, and Lisa Bartels is a French teacher in North Carolina. Now, both Erin and Lisa are National Board Certified teachers, and they have both also been named Teacher of the Year by their state language organizations. So they truly represent accomplishment and practice in our field. Now, what makes this conversation especially powerful is that Erin and Lisa have both gone through the National Board Certification process themselves. They know firsthand what's challenging about it, what's transformative about it, and how it can shape you, not just as a teacher, but as a professional and a leader. They've also recently published a book through Routledge titled Achieving National Board Certification for World Languages, Proven Strategies and Tips for Accomplished Teachers. And it is specifically written with us in mind, world language teachers navigating this process. So today, we're going to get into the benefits and the specifics of National Board Certification for world language teachers, and it's going to be truly grounded in real experience and practical insight. So Erin and Lisa, they're here with us, so let's get going with this conversation. So I first met Lisa this past year at Actful when I was doing podcast episodes, and she came over and she gave a soundbite about her takeaway. And part of that soundbite, she mentioned that she was a National Board Certified teacher. And so I had some questions about that. And she said, well, actually, I have a book coming out with my co-author, and it is going to be published soon. And I said, okay, I have questions about this. So rather than sit here and ask you all these questions, I am going to have you and your co-author, Erin, on the podcast with me to answer all my questions about National Board Certification, because you literally wrote the book on it. So why not have you on and have this conversation? So my first question, to make sure that I'm understanding this, and I'm sure many of our listeners have the same question, is what exactly is National Board Certification and how is it different or similar to state certification?
Those are the most perfect questions to start with. So thank you for that. National Board Certification basically is the highest professional certification a teacher can obtain, in addition to being the most respected one about teaching. So, National Board Certification was actually designed to develop, retain, and recognize accomplished teaching and have that contribute to ongoing progress in schools. So, state teaching certifications say that you're legally allowed to teach in that state and that you've met the requirements to do so. National Board Certification says you're accomplished at teaching.
So, National Board Certification is one program regardless of what state you're from.
Absolutely.
And what is the granting agency? So within a state certification is the Department of Education. When we're talking about National Board Certification, is this connected to national levels of education? Who is the granting agency of this?
So the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards is not a federal agency. It's not a program of the U.S. Department of Ed. It's actually independent and nonpartisan. It's a nonprofit organization that is working to advance accomplished teaching. And their funding is from kind of a combination of sources. It's from public, nonprofit, and private organizations. I think what's really important that they do is that this certification process was actually developed by teachers for teachers. So for me, that means I have a little bit more buy-in.
It's interesting that it is not a government affiliated program. So it really is for teachers by teachers that's really focused on teaching. Whereas at the state level, it is a government funded program and necessary within the state. Whereas state certification to teach in the public school system anyway is necessary, whereas national board certification is not necessary, but it's something teachers seek out because of their own professionalism. Are there places where it is actually required that you would have national board certification to teach? I was just curious about that.
I don't think there's any requirement anywhere. And the amount that it is valued or recognized does vary from state to state. Some states really value it and pay stipends for it and encourage teachers and provide lots of support. And in other states, it's not as widely recognized. So I think there is some variation there.
So Lisa, I'm actually going to stay with you on this question because I want to go a little deeper on that. So if that is in fact not the case, why should world language teachers consider pursuing national board certification? What is that sort of next level professional benefit for teachers?
So national board certification really is the highest professional accomplishment that a teacher can attain. It is widely recognized, even in states that don't provide benefits for it. It's still recognized as a valued professional certification. Just having those letters behind your name lets people know at a glance that you are an accomplished teacher who has really delved in and perfected your teaching practice. It's also a great opportunity for networking. I've met so many other teachers through the process of National Board and through the process of mentoring. And so it's a great way to expand your professional reach. It provides leadership opportunities. Lots of states do offer a nice stipend or financial benefit, or sometimes it counts toward advanced licensure or licensure renewal.
It's interesting that since we had the conversation at Actful about this, and I've been seeing teachers' email signatures and in different places, and even when I looked on LinkedIn, and I'm seeing that designation in a way I haven't seen before. Now, I'm sure it's been there, but it's like when you say, I've never seen a yellow car, and then suddenly you start seeing yellow cars everywhere as if they were never there. But I'm really tuned into it now, and I'm seeing that. And now I'm understanding, wow, this is so much more than just your state certification. You've gone so much further, and you've really engaged in this process. And so to go a little bit further on sort of the reasons why teachers would do this, Erin, I'll come to you for this. Beyond earning the National Board Certification designation, How does the certification process impact teachers in their classroom practice, really in this very introspective way of going through this process?
It absolutely does. And I think the best way to answer that is kind of twofold, a little bit me personally and a little bit what does research say. So me personally, it shook up my career when I was in kind of that mid-career slump and just needed something to turn my practice kind of on its head. And it made me look for ways to shake up my curriculum and do things differently. It forced that, in fact. And I really enjoyed that process. Like, I really enjoyed kicking some things to the curb, trying new and different things, and being forced to look at things differently. And then from a research standpoint, there has been, I believe, a little over 10 years of research from across the country about the effectiveness of national board certified teachers. And the research confirms that students taught by national board certified teachers learn more than those taught by non-board certified teachers. Generally, the research has said it's about 1 to 2 months of additional learning compared to peers in other classrooms. And that is even greater in certain demographics.
So you mentioned that you started going through this process because you were at a point in your career where you wanted to have this reset, go a little deeper. And so I'm curious, Lisa, from you, what was your sort of tipping point or starting point where you said, this is something I want to do?
So I spent a lot of my career teaching overseas. And when I was back in the US, I wasn't sure which state I was going to live in. I've lived and taught in several different states. And so one of the reasons I was interested in pursuing national board certification is because it is recognized on some level nationwide. I felt that designation was going to help me as I moved or was uncertain where I was going to be landing in my career, because at least having those national board letters behind my name, every state would recognize that I was an accomplished teacher.
And so you had been aware of it. You both had been aware of this process. And then you said, let me look into this a little further. And how am I going to go through this? And I want to stay on this topic real quickly before we move on to the nitty gritty and how it all works. And I would like to know, I'll start with you, Erin. How has your teaching been impacted by going through this process on a sort of daily basis with what you're doing and how you approach your teaching?
There is a process in national board certification that comes up over and over. It's taking your knowledge of students and gathering data to then inform your instruction and then deliver instruction and evaluate. It's just this like circular process that is so much less, what do I want to do today? And so much more, what do my students need? And what is the data that shows me that they need this? Not just me thinking that they do. So it's very data driven. One thing that goes along with that for me is that I discovered the process when I was a NEA Foundation Global Learning Fellow and was surrounded by board certified teachers. And let me tell you, when you're in a whole gathering of them, there's something different. There was so much just like everybody trying to collaborate and talking about innovation. That piece has really come into my classroom, constantly thinking, how can I innovate? And just being excited about innovation.
We're going to go through the process in a little bit, but part of that process is being introspective and reporting out on your teaching. But then that actually becomes, even though you have the certification now, you continue to do that in your classroom. And so, Lisa, how about for you? What has been the impact on your teaching?
To reiterate exactly what Erin said, that architecture of accomplished teaching, that like circular, recursive process that never stops, where I'm always looking at what do my students need, where do I want them to go, and how do I get them there? And in kind of an unexpected way, it's made me a very creative teacher, because I'm no longer tied to a specific curriculum or specific things that I do every year or processes. It's all about student achievement. And how do I bring my pedagogical knowledge related to language instruction? How do I combine that with what I know about these students to move them into deeper proficiency toward the outcomes that I want to see in my class?
There's a movement towards competency-based teaching and standard-based teaching and proficiency-based teaching, whatever we want to call it, all those buzzwords. And it sounds like what you're doing is you are applying that to your teaching. So it's not just that the students are working towards competency, but you're constantly engaged in this process of your own competency as a teacher and what the data says about that. So I'm loving that. So I'm ready to start to get into the nitty-gritty about how we can help teachers make this happen. I'll start with you, Lisa. Who is a good candidate for national board certification in, I'll say world languages, but just a teacher in general? Who's a good candidate for this?
Sure. It is a challenging process. So it's something that you want to begin when you are pretty solid in your teaching career. And that for a lot of teachers, that's mid-career. It can be earlier. Teachers do have to have 3 years of teaching experience before they can complete the national board process, although you can start it before you have the 3 years. Also, at this time, it's only available for French and Spanish teachers in the world language domain, and your students have to be between 11 and 18 years old. So that for most of us, that's middle and high school students. Erin and I are lobbying National Board to add certificate areas and levels. So stay tuned for that. But you want to be pretty comfortable and confident in your day-to-day teaching practice because it does take a lot of mental energy and emotional investment. And the classes that you use in your portfolio, you are really doing such a deep dive into those classes that it can be helpful if your other classes are not on autopilot exactly, but if you have your curriculum established. I would caution teachers to not begin this process if you're in the midst of some large change in your life, whether a personal change or a professional change that's going to suck up a lot of your time and emotional resources, because you have to invest heavily as you complete this process.
So in terms of having a state certification to then go through this process, is that required, and what levels should teachers have?
It is required to have a clear state teaching license, and the National Board doesn't give any requirements as far as provisional or professional, just a clear state license.
So let's get into the process now. So hopefully there are teachers listening right now that are thinking, oh, I've heard about this, and I'm feeling very motivated to start this process. So, Erin, at a high level, what does the National Board certification process look like for a world language teacher?
There are 4 main components and 1 proficiency test. The Reader's Digest version is component 1 is a test of content knowledge. It has multiple choice questions and 3 essays. Component 2 is all about differentiating instruction, and the portfolio entry is about how you guided 2 specific students through a unit. Component 3 is about teaching practice and the learning environment. So it includes 2 videos and the analysis of 2 class periods. And component 4 is about being an effective and reflective practitioner. So that one includes work on assessment, collaboration, and both a professional and student need. Then the proficiency test, all of the other content areas only have 4 components, whereas world language teachers, we have the 4 components and the proficiency test. So that's ACTFL, speaking and writing tests, the OPI and the WPT. Candidates need to score at least advanced low on both of them.
And so you mentioned that the first component was content. So how's that different from the proficiency test?
It's more focused on classroom pedagogy. There are also some components of linguistics in it and methodology specific to world language instruction.
The OPI is the oral and the WPT is the written. So that is exclusively testing your ability to speak and write the target language.
So Lisa, what's the time frame that you would put on this process?
So it is possible to do the process in 1 school year, and there are teachers who do that. Personally, I spent about 40 to 50 hours on each portfolio component. So of the 4 components, that is a huge time investment, and it is going to really take over your life. So a lot of candidates, and probably my recommended timeline, is to take 2 years and do 2 components your first year and 2 components your second year. And then sometimes it's very common actually that candidates have to redo a component. And so in that third year, you can redo anything you need to. But teachers do have to weigh this based on their own professional and personal requirements.
Is there a process for applying to be able to go through this process, or is this open to any teacher who is sort of mid-career and has their state certification? What does that process look like?
So it is open to anyone who meets those qualifications of teaching French or Spanish, teaching 11 to 18-year-olds, having a bachelor's degree and a state teaching license, whatever that looks like in your state, and having taught for at least 3 years. So if you meet those qualifications, then you can just go to the national board and register and say, okay, I'm in for this year. And then you can decide how many components you want to tackle.
And do they use a rubric, or what is the way that they evaluate each of these components of the process so that you can get certified? So I'm assuming not everyone gets certified in the end by going through the process.
You are correct that not everybody does certify. This is one of the things that candidates need to be aware of when they enter this process. I think anyone who enters the national board process or who's thinking about it is probably a confident and effective classroom teacher. People just don't take this on if they're not. And most of us are very used to being successful at whatever we try. And national board, it is not a guaranteed success. Only about 40% of candidates achieve certification on their first attempt, and something like 75% achieve after several attempts. So that's something to bear in mind.
I'm sure that if teachers want to see specific rubrics in preparing for all that, they can get much more detail by reading your book. So I would like to know, those teachers that are not getting the certification on their first try, those 60%, do you have some idea of why that is, or what teachers might be doing that isn't getting them there, or what they could be doing to perhaps get it on the first try?
I would first like to point out that the best teacher I ever had in my entire life is a national board certified teacher, and her first time through, she missed it by a fraction of a percent of a point. It was crazy, and she's the best I've ever had. Now, that happens, and it absolutely is frustrating for candidates when that happens. But what's vital to take into consideration is that it's not saying that you're not a great teacher. You can absolutely be a great teacher without being board certified. But it's a lot like what we try to tell our students. It's issues with people not directly responding to the questions and not looking at the rubrics and how the rubrics correspond to the questions and how the two of those correspond to candidates' answers. Mm-hmm. So we really get after students for not doing that, but we as adults then do that.
One of the things we've done in our book is we've taken the questions that National Board asks you to write about, and we've lined them up with the rubric points and created I statements so that candidates can say, I showed XYZ when and that helps, I think, plan and really focus whether you've actually answered those questions or not. One big mistake I see candidates make, as I've worked with a lot of candidates, is a lot of the questions are multi-part questions. And sometimes candidates will go into deep detail on one part of the question and then they miss the second part of the question. A lot of times the first part of the question is asking for a description of what you did in class, and the second part is asking for you to analyze the effectiveness. And teachers sometimes leave out that second analysis piece, and then they don't score well on the rubrics.
You have worked with teachers to go through this process. And so it sounds like it might be a good idea to have a mentor. somebody that has gone through this before. And so what are the benefits of that, and how would one go about finding a mentor to help go through this?
I truly think that having some sort of mentorship in this process is vital. I think the process can really feel isolating, especially when world language departments are small anyway. And so many of us can be like a department of one. So that can be hard. And so having someone with you can be helpful. Now, how do you find that, and who is the right person? Ideally, in a perfect world, it's another world language teacher in your district and you're working on it together at the same time. That doesn't always work. I think there can be a lot of value in working with another national board certified teacher, maybe of a different discipline. I had three who were math teachers and who helped. I think a great place to find people to help is in a Facebook group. Actually, there's a really active Facebook group called National Board Certification for World Language Teachers. And if anyone is interested, please fill out the questions and agree to the group rules to get in. It's just a community. People ask questions, others provide answers. People say, hey, I'm looking for a private mentor. Is anyone interested? So it's a great place to connect and find community.
So I guarantee you there are teachers listening right now who are very motivated and they're hearing about all of this. But the one lingering question that's always behind it all is, what's the price tag on this? So what does that look like, Lisa?
There is some cost associated with it. The cheapest that you can achieve national board is around $2,200. That's $500 approximately for each of the 4 components. And then there are a few additional costs related to the testing and some subscription to the site. Mm-hmm. So that's if you complete all 4 components and pass them all on your first try. Many of us have to redo a component, and it is $500 each time you resubmit a component. So there is some cost involved. It's less than a professional degree, like a master's degree, though.
Have you heard of any teachers, or maybe even your own districts, where the school districts or at the state level have helped teachers out financially going through this process?
So when I started certification, my district actually covered part of the cost of each component after you proved that you passed it. That was very helpful. And since I certified, they changed the National Board for Professional Teaching Standards, made things a little bit easier for people in that you can now choose a payment plan, which I think is helpful. I wish that there was more money out there for board certification that's not coming from districts that you could apply for grants and things like that. Lisa is correct that it's right around $2,200 if you do everything in 1 year and pass the first time through. My process was actually 2 years. I did 2 components per year. And when I first certified, I got a stipend from my district and my state. So within 2 years, the cost of certification was wiped out by my stipend for it.
Some states have very generous stipends, and some states, I think, is really smart. They offer additional financial benefit for teachers who work in a high needs school. So some states really are using National Board to improve their statewide education system.
So it seems like in a lot of circumstances, teachers can get that funding back through their stipends and increases in salary and whatever that might look like. So it's just the idea of, oh, I'm going to spend over $2,000 just to be an introspective teacher. It's great. It would be wonderful if we all just could do that. But the idea that there is some financial benefit.
Having National Board certification can also help open doors to different positions, which may pay more, and different consulting gigs, things like that. So I think that's a component of it that's often overlooked, because I'm positive that certification helped me get my first writing contract with a traditional publisher.
Right.
And that's worth something.
So if we take all of these ideas that we've put together about how you went about it, how you both figured it out, you went through the process and you're convinced that this is absolutely what you should have been doing. So for teachers listening right now, look them right in the eye and you say, you should consider national board certification because
it's a challenge. It will stretch you and it will help your students.
And how about you, Erin?
It's a win-win because it shook up my practice, which made me better. And the way I approach my classroom, I know it makes my students better and the way I teach better. So it's better for me. It's better for my students. Win-win.
I'm going to ask you some recommendations for this process and in general for our listeners. But before you give your recommendations, I want to make sure and remind our listeners that my big recommendation for them is the book that Lisa Bartels and Erin Austin have written that takes on this topic. So their book is Achieving National Board Certification in World Languages, Proven Strategies and Tips for Accomplished Teaching. It is available now. And if you go on the Routledge website, which is in the show notes, the link is in the show notes, and there is a discount code. It's 25AFLY4. You're not going to remember that. So just go to the show notes and you can put that code in the Routledge website and you will get 20% off of their book through the end of March 2026. So that is my big recommendation. So let's go to some recommendations from the two of you. So Lisa, do you have anything to recommend to our listeners?
So Erin is a prolific author. She has other amazing books that you should check out. They're available through Routledge's website and on Amazon. One is called Going Global in the World Language Classroom, and it's about how to bring global literacy into your classroom, and it's phenomenal. You should check it out.
Excellent. And Erin, any recommendations for us?
There are a few books available by Bobby Faulkner on successful strategies for pursuing national board certification. So those books, I think a lot of people have used in the past, and they're certainly helpful. One of them I have used, but they are not world language specific. Still helpful, but not world language specific. I think probably one of the biggest helps for people is getting on that National Board Certification for World Language Teachers Facebook group.
And so in terms of connecting with the two of you, so Lisa, if our listeners want to connect with you, where can they be doing that?
Sure. I have a website and a blog. It's explorecurriculum.com. I have lots and lots of resources for teachers there. And I've just started putting up shorts on my YouTube channel with tips and tricks for teachers and especially related to national board certification.
Okay. And Erin, how are we connecting with you?
You can connect on my website, Onygo Madame. That's ONYGOMADAME.com. I also have a YouTube channel where I give lots of world language tips and tricks, including national board specific. And I love connecting professionally on LinkedIn.
I always like to leave our listeners with a hearty piece of advice. It could be about life. It could be about teaching. Just something that if they're riding to school this morning, listening to this podcast, something to ponder throughout their day. Erin, let's start with you.
Professionally, I would say never be afraid to shake up your practice because the growing pains are real, but it's also super fun. And also just personally and professionally, I don't think there's a whole lot of stress that cannot be fixed by a good concert or a good workout.
Love that. And how about you, Lisa?
My biggest piece of advice is to remember that everything we do is for students and anything else is just distraction. We don't teach French, we don't teach Spanish, we don't teach middle or high school, we teach students. And so keeping that student-centered focus is the center of what we do.
I very much appreciate your time being here today, Erin and Lisa, and everything that you've put into creating this book for teachers to dive into this process, which is going to be so useful for them and their careers.
Thank you, Joshua.
What are your takeaways from that conversation with Erin Austin and Lisa Bartels? Hopefully you have a better understanding of the National Board Certification process and are inspired to perhaps consider it for yourself. Be sure to check out the show notes to connect with Erin and Lisa. You'll also see the link to get their book and the 20% discount code that is good through the end of March 2026. I will talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. Be sure to follow or subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And let's stay connected on social media. You can find me at WL Classroom pretty much everywhere. You'll also find lots of ideas, suggestions, and resources on my website, WLClassroom.com. Now stay curious, keep learning, and continue the great work you do inspiring and supporting your students.